The core idea and the problem that we were solving was connecting everything together. We had realized in the beginning that healthcare doesn't have the internet. That was our big epiphany. And when we say that, I mean, the most common symptom of not having the internet is when you go into like a doctor's office and you have to fill out the same paperwork every time, the same forms every time. And when you go visit a health system or a doctor's office or some other portion of healthcare, it feels like they don't know who you are and you have to reintroduce yourself. And that's really the symptom of the lack of the internet of healthcare. But that being our main problem, we had to figure out what products we would build to solve that problem. And it was very much an experimentation, a trial and error, putting products into the market, assessing their product market fit, and then ruthlessly turning them off if they didn't work. And I think that's really critical. So we started in the market building software applications, kind of point solutions to help solve some of those issues of interoperability. And we found that healthcare didn't really want another full screen user interface because it had so many already, and we were clicking back and forth between different screens on many things they were doing. So they're very resistant to that. In fact, if it meant you had to leave your EMR or your primary software and go to something else, then it was going to meet a lot of resistance. The other thing is we tried to homogenize a lot of the data behind the scenes. And in many of the things that I've done, both in healthcare and in military intelligence, there's always this kind of idea of a panacea of a unified data model where everything is similar. All the data are collected in a similar way and stored in a similar way, and thus can be accessed across the board in similar ways. And that never actually happens. That panacea never really comes to fruition. And people spend years and years trying to make it come to fruition. And you'll hear challenges and stories of failed attempts at interoperability because of that very thing. So another thing we tried was a little bit of that data homogenization and realized that that wasn't really going to bring us to success. It wasn't until we were going around to these health systems and delivering our products and realizing that at every hospital that we visited, there were hundreds of human workers that were sitting in between the pieces of software and acting as a router, basically taking data out of one system and putting it in another, copying, pasting, moving data, extracting, transforming, loading data, just like a piece of software would do. They were also the key router of communications between hospitals and insurance companies, hospitals and hospitals, patients and hospitals. So they were this really human manual router that had been holding the internet of healthcare together. And that led us to this idea of creating an AI worker that could sit in that same seat virtually, take on the workflows that they were doing of moving the data around and transferring information and checking things and submitting things, extraction and ingestion, transformation of data. And if we could put an AI worker in that seat, we could effectively turn that human router into an AI router. And if we could do that, we could effectively create a network by connecting those AI routers to one another. And that was the seed of the product Olive that really achieved product market fit from the first time. And prior to that, we had so many different attempts that we had to stop. We had to, like I said, ruthlessly kill those products. And that's the hardest part, because you invest so much time and energy and belief into these products. And if it isn't obvious that there's product market fit, if the unit economics aren't working and it's not being pulled off the shelf, then you need to move on to a new product. And with Olive, the AI worker that we created, there was product market fit, and it was obvious. It was so different than anything we had built. It was being pulled off the shelf. Our sales were off the charts, and our average sales prices were growing very, very quickly. It was clear that our unit economics were going to allow this company with this product to scale to something really, really big. So that was our journey, our evolution, until we hit the AI worker. And then from the AI worker, we've since kind of expanded that capability to add some features, but ultimately we're still doing the exact same thing. What we wanted to do again was replace that human router with an AI router. And the reason we would do that is because we were wasting human capacity. So if you look at the entire market of healthcare, there are 16 million employees. 4 million of those employees, or 25%, are human routers. That's 8.6 billion hours of human capacity effectively being wasted. So the idea was, where could we free up the most human capacity? And we knew that these health systems that we were working with were very large, employing thousands or tens of thousands of employees, and had a lot of costs associated with these human router networks that they had built. So we built a methodology that we call the SHAPE methodology, which is scaling humans through advanced process engineering. And that methodology allowed us to rank and prioritize all the different possible things we could automate. We call those possible things that we could automate candidate processes for automation, or CPAs. And we collected hundreds of CPAs. By today, we have over 2,000 CPAs that we've collected with our customers. And we put them all in a grid, in a matrix, with lots of calculations and variables behind the scenes, that then ranks them on where we should start. And where we start is always driven by speed to deployment and impact. So where we can have the most financial impact, but also where we can make impact quickly. So that's what drives the competencies of Olive. And in the early days, those candidate processes for automation were very heavy in what we call the hands of Olive, meaning being able to type and click and traverse a piece of software like a human, being able to navigate through an EMR or a portal or a website. That was the kind of main capabilities of Olive in the early days. And we effectively looked at it like an analogous human. You know, if Olive were to be an AI worker like a human worker, what would those capabilities, those competencies be? And it was starting with the hands, and then the eyes, and now we're looking at the ears and the mouth. So we kind of divided it like an analogous human, and started mostly with the hands. Well, so the company has had a strategic plan that we call the 5 strategic maneuvers for several years. And we are still on the journey of implementing those 5 strategic maneuvers, bringing them into existence, and then stabilizing those strategies for the future. We were very clear about that strategy several years ago, and we have been executing on that same exact strategy now for a few years, with a few years still to go. Those 5 things are creating the AI worker, known as Olive Works, which is the very first product that we launched into the market. It's an asynchronous, unattended AI worker that's working in the cloud at night, taking on massive workflows. It's our flagship offering. Our second strategic maneuver was the AI coworker, known as Olive Helps, which, as you know, has launched and is effectively helping the human worker become a superhuman worker. It's based on the science of cybernetics. It's all about being able to be in the loop of human decision making and changing the behavior of the human as they're working in order to increase efficiency, decrease errors, and effectively raise the ROI of the human worker. So we're really excited about that. The third is the ability to connect the payer and the provider with a fiber optic cable, as we've called it. Being able to automate prior authorization, notice of admission, request of information, and really redo that network of communications between those two very vital entities in healthcare. That's called Olive Shares. And that's going really well. We just announced the acquisition of a clearinghouse that gives us full clearinghouse capabilities to send claims and get remittance. We're processing 56 million claims on an annual basis through Olive Shares right now, which is pretty extraordinary. The fourth strategic maneuver is Olive Assures, which is the ability to predict the likelihood of claims being paid, since we have millions and millions and millions of claims running through machine learning models. And if we do predict that they're going to get paid, we have a financing structure where we can pay those claims immediately and eliminate the cost of collection for those claims for our customers. So that's using the data of Olive to provide a financial services product, which is pretty interesting. That's our fourth. And then our fifth, we've not yet rolled out. It'll be at the end of this year that we hopefully come to market with a new product that we're calling Olive Knows. And it is using the massive brain of Olive, which is over a petabyte in size today, to provide decisioning capabilities to humans, to provide intelligence, decision support, and really effective search, so that humans have access to the wisdom in healthcare at their fingertips. So that's really exciting, and we're looking forward to rolling that out at the end of this year. But that's now that the 5 strategic maneuvers are put into place and stabilized. The next will be to grow those strategic maneuvers. So that's still our plan. The 5 strategic maneuvers are still our plan for the foreseeable future. I would say the first thing I would mention, if you're going to start something, is to decide from the very beginning if you're going to start a $0 million company or a $0 billion company. And I didn't make that up. That's from one of my investors named Vinod Khosla. But the difference is massive, because in the beginning you both have zero revenue, but one is building a great company that is going to be millions of dollars of revenue at some point, millions of dollars of value, maybe even hundreds of millions of value, but is a different profile. The people you hire are different, the milestones are different, the things that you measure against are different, and it may never get venture capital. It may never bring on investors. It was like my first company before Olive. It's fantastic. I loved it. An incredible experience. Many people, their lives were changed because of that company, and it's still, the product that it built is still being used today in the intelligence community. So it's not that the significance is different for a $0 million company, but if you don't decide that early, then you're going to wrestle with these questions constantly. So the $0 billion company is, you're going for something massive, a huge market. You have to achieve billions of dollars in value and potentially billions in revenue in order to actually to bring to life that vision that you have, something really big. So you have to decide from the beginning, is it a 0 million or 0 billion? That will shape your decisions. That will help you decide between taking money from venture or not. That'll help you decide what R&D projects you take on, what people you hire, what products you bring to life and take out of the market. So that would be my very first advice: figure out 0 million, 0 billion. And then after that, I would say be very clear about your vision, be obstinate about your vision, be super flexible in the tactics of how to get that vision or how to help that vision come to reality. But never kind of always stick to that core vision of why you started it, and then communicate that vision constantly throughout the lifetime. And remember, if you're going to go 0 billion over 0 million, then you need to be willing to put in a decade of work before you see kind of success, or before things really become clear that it's going to work. So that's my quick advice. Well, I had always imagined what growth would be like. I had this movie in my head, like when you get to 100 people, when you get to 200, 300, 400, 500, 1,000. I imagined the offices. I imagined the people buzzing around. I imagined the day-to-day life, my work life. And I was 1,000% wrong on all that. The pandemic contributed to that in a huge way. We went from 200 people to nearly 1,000 where we are today in 18 months. We are not in a giant monolithic office with people buzzing around. We've adopted a completely new work model where people work where they like, wherever they want, they live where they want, and they're all over what we call the grid, which encapsulates the entire country. That's probably the biggest surprise, is that I had imagined that a very different kind of scenario in my head than what actually happened. But I don't know that we could have grown as fast as we did if we weren't forced to adopt these new work models, or at least given the opportunity to decide what our work model would be based on the current conditions. I also think I underestimated the power of leadership. I'm a tech guy by background. I believe in technology. I believe in software, and I kind of over-index to technology to solve problems. But what I realized was that every problem is a leadership problem. Every problem, buggy code, something, a defect in a product, a customer upset, an employee upset, someone feeling marginalized, someone feeling like they were left out, someone not feeling appreciated, someone feeling great. Those are all leadership problems. And, over-indexing on leadership is more valuable than over-indexing on engineering. Now, all that said, it's still very, very important not to lose, sight of, being a product-oriented, engineering-oriented company. But I think leadership, to my surprise, has been one of the most formidable tools that we've used. So it's a great paradox that building an AI company is all about the humans.